Hey friends, this is a different video than you'd usually expect to see on the YouTube. Recently, I had the pleasure of speaking to the Microsoft Learn student ambassadors. I talked about mentorship and sponsorship. I talked about the role of the senior engineer in an early in career engineer's life. I talked about the next generation of creators and kind of tried to facilitate a welcoming environment for them. This was an event for the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador community. This is a community that is all about learning and exploring. So if you're a student, ages 16 and up, or if you know one who might be interested, go and take a look at studentambassadors.microsoft.com. And what will follow now in the YouTube is my talk that I gave to the student ambassadors, and I thank them for letting me repost it here on my YouTube. Cool. So I wanted to talk about mentorship, sponsorship, and storytelling, but before I do that, I was told that putting Comic Sans on your slide is unprofessional. So I've changed the font. So let me switch that to something more professional. And then I was told that having a slide with just black text and a white background is also unprofessional. So I've also changed that and updated that to have an idealized background of what a computer science person or a programmer does. You can zoom in on that for me and show us what that looks like. And also I'm a TikTok influencer now, and you can send me money. But this is not representative of what being a software person or a techie is. This is really more what it looks like, right? Let's go ahead and keep the focus on the slides and not my giant head. Thank you very much. Cool. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. I'm old. Welcome. I am excited that you are here, and I'm thrilled that you are the next generation. So let's talk a little bit about attitude, and let's talk about style. There is this really great book magazine that I got in March of 1984, when many of you were negative 20 years old. And this is this wonderful magazine that we would get. And at this point, it says Enthusiast 99. That's not the year 99. It's for the TI, or the Texas Instruments 99, which was a computer. You can see in this picture here that this young lady is got her bubble gum and her dress, and she is programming the TI-89. And that was on the cover of this magazine in March of 1984. And that was inspiring to a generation and myself, because tech is for anybody who has bubble gum. I'd like to see magazine articles and covers that look like this a lot. I hope that tech welcomes you and that you enjoy not only this event, but tech in general. Now, there is a quote that often gets used in the diversity and inclusion space that's kind of called inclusion isn't it's diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. It gets used a lot. I think it's an okay quote. This is not an amazing quote. I actually prefer Daniel Juday's modification of this quote, which is inclusion is being a member of the party planning committee. I think that actually freaking nails it. It's really good. There was a thing that I wrote a blog post about 10, 15 years ago that was called pie chart diversity. And pie chart diversity is kind of like the Power Rangers. If you build a team of Power Rangers, what happens is you get to choose 5 people. So you end up picking just like, one Asian person and one black person. And you can have 2 white people, but one of them has to be a redhead. It's kind of like Riverdale. And no matter what the cartoon is, you end up with the same kind of like artificial diversity. That's not inclusion. That's just kind of a pretty color palette. So I think it's really important when we call out what inclusion means. It is the opposite of exclusion. So why do people get excluded? Let's dig into that, because we can talk about D&I, but I want to talk about
Hey,
why
Scott,
people
we
get
have
excluded.
a question.
Oh, I love it. We've already seconds in and there's a question. Yes.
Well, of course. They're like, who is this guy? I guess I can ask him stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So
You can totally ask him stuff.
how would you define diversity then, Scott, outside of just these cartoons?
Well, so in the context here of diversity is differences. Diversity is the thing that makes us different. It is, you could have 4 or 5 white people, but one could be from Estonia, one could be from Russia, one could be a veteran, one could be old, one could be young. Diversity is color, it is background, it is religion, it is all of those things that make us wonderfully different. It is the pie chart of identity. For example, you might look at me and say, okay, here's an old straight white guy from Oregon, but I have a number of invisible disabilities. My right arm is paralyzed right now. I've got type 1 diabetes. So within the disability community, I have experiences that maybe an able-bodied person might not have. but that balances things out with different privileges that I am very fortunate to have. Diversity could be your background, that you're a first-generation immigrant, or that your parents came from elsewhere. It could be that you speak one language at home and then not another one at work. It could be that you spent 9 years on a nuclear submarine. It's all of the wonderful experiences that we have. But when we see it in cartoons, and why I point out this slide right here, is it is, in America at least, it is almost always just skin color. So artificial diversity is like quota-based diversity. And I really like the idea of thinking about things in the context of including people. And to include means to consciously not gatekeep, to consciously not exclude, which is what I'm going to talk about in my next slide. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I love your comment there about hidden disabilities and how we don't know what other people are going through. And so diversity really does come in all sorts of forms. So thanks, Scott. That was an awesome answer.
Thank you. Thank you for the interruption. I appreciate it. I want to point this out too. This is really great that Morgan did that, because when we give talks like this, you could just watch a YouTube, but we don't want here at the conference to make this feel like you're watching a YouTube, because this is a new medium, right? Having, speeches with PowerPoint is an old thing, but the idea that you can reach out across the internet, ask a great question, give me a gift, where the gift is that great question, and then Morgan can interrupt and we can have a conversation about that, is what makes this medium of an interactive conference a new thing. Cool. So exclusion. Did you know that we excluded people from reading? In fact, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there was a time when only the priests could read, and they would keep knowledge of reading from the people, the great unwashed, out into the space there. That has expanded, I think, now into the technology priesthood, and we can accidentally or intentionally hoard knowledge. This can also be known as gatekeeping, which I'll talk about in a little bit. When someone is an expert in a field, you can address your expertise in two different ways, right? You can either give it generously and make sure that everyone knows that, hey, I'm an expert, but you can be an expert too. And I can tell you where I got my information, and I'd love for you to be an expert and to be involved. Or I can just say, well, just leave the expertise to me. I know what I'm talking about. You should just take my word for it. There's an interesting quote here from an underground zine from 1974, where Ted Nelson said that experts in the field rarely want people to understand what they do. That quote is from 1974, but doesn't it feel like that's a quote that you could expect from 2021? Now, why am I mentioning this? I don't want to just simply lecture to the people who already are converted. You don't want to preach to the converted. What you want to do is have people who are either on the one side of being a mentor or a mentee, or people who could potentially be a mentor or mentee, to understand that they can inadvertently, without meaning to, exclude people and gatekeep. Now, gatekeeping and
Wait,
gatekeeper.
Scott, pause.
Yes, ma'am. Pause. Back up.
Pause. I think I need like a sign or something.
Yes. Well, you can just appear. I'm going to move you over here, so when I see your head pop up, then I will say, "Oh, Morgan has a question. What's up?"
So you talked a little bit about mentoring there, but does somebody have to be the mentor and somebody have to be the mentee, or have you seen it go both ways?
I love that you brought that up. I'm actually going to hit that in a couple of slides. So we're going to talk deeply about that. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, because a mentor-mentee relationship actually doesn't have to be one way.
Perfect.
All
You're
right.
just on top of it, Scott.
I try to be. So give me just a second and let's see if I get it right. Cool. So gatekeeping is standing in the way of information flow. It's specifically information flow. Sometimes we think about gatekeeping as preventing people from being successful or keeping people from getting jobs, but at its very essence, it is about information flow. If I can get the information out to you, then you can be successful as well. But if I prevent you from getting a hold of that information, then that's going to make your career, your understanding, and your life difficult. So you want to understand, though, why you're gatekeeping, why you as either a young person or myself as someone who's a little bit older and farther along in tech might, based on my personal experience, my professional experience, have some bias, and in that bias, prevent someone from getting good information. So what I try to do, and what I recommend to everybody in my whole career, has been the idea of putting out good work and sharing it for free, sharing it liberally, sharing it so that everyone can get it. And at its essence, whether you work at Microsoft or you are in school right now, or you're looking to work and have an internship at one of the other companies, is this fundamental concept that I believe in about not wasting your keystrokes. Think about that for a second. Don't waste your keystrokes. Let's talk about that. Conserve your keystrokes. You have a finite number of keystrokes left in your hands before you die. Drink that in for a second. While you're doing that, let's tease Morgan for a second. Let's go here to keys left, and let's put in Morgan's age. Morgan, you've been 25 as long as I've known you.
Forever, perpetually.
I have no idea. I'm going to assume you're 25. Maybe you're 29. I've been 29 for many years. I'm going to put in.
So was my grandma.
Oh yeah, your grandma's also 29.
She turns 29 every year.
Yeah. You see here it says keysleft.com. I made a website, and you put in how old you are and how fast you type, and it will tell you how many keystrokes that you have left. Okay, and this might seem very morbid, and you might be like, oh my goodness, what a horrible idea, Hanselman. Why would you do this to us? Notice the keystrokes number is actually going down in real time because you are not typing right now, so you're losing potential keystrokes. Why I put this here is I want people to be intentional and deliberate about their lives, and I want you to think about how many computer programs do you have left? How many love letters? How many novels? Or how many emails to your boss? Where do you want to spend your keystrokes? This is about deciding where you want to put your things. So where do you want the gift of your keystrokes to go? So let's say, for example, right after this, some of the great questions that we have, maybe some of the ones we don't get to answer, get emailed to me or you. And I don't know some of the student ambassadors, and they say, hey, Scott, loved your talk. Can I pick your brain? Here's a question. And I think to myself, great question, amazing question, but I don't know you. I'm not going to give you the gift of 2,500 of my keystrokes, right? And then you're going to say, thanks. And then that's the end of the conversation. But it was a great question, and a great question is a gift. So what should I do with those keystrokes? I should put them somewhere with a URL. Blog post, wiki, SharePoint, Markdown, GitHub, literally anywhere but email, because email is the only place that everyone can't search.
True.
So if you do that for many, many years, check this out. If I go up here to my blog, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a blogger person. I've been blogging for a long time. And if I go here to my blog and I click on date, there's a series of years along the top here. And you can see now here's 2021. And if we go all over here, I've been blogging pretty much every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 19 years. Next year will be my 20-year anniversary for blogging. I'm going to click on 2020 here. And if I scroll down, you can see this is just a year of blogs. Now, this isn't blogging every single day of the week or whatever, but it's every time I have a thought, every time someone sends me a question, I'll go and I'll blog that. If you do that, if you blog, I'm going to click on category and just start scrolling so that you can see the archives here. If you blogged that long, you could become a mid-level blogger like me. This is just an online diary. There's nothing fancy about this. The only difference between this and someone else, and I'm just going to scroll while I'm talking and show you my stuff. I'm just pressing the space bar. Why am I showing you this? Because this is what's so exciting. This is your career that's coming. You just got started. Please write it down. Pablo.
Scott, so they're asking about how can being a part of a community like this, or like you're showing us blogging and all the contributions you do online, help you get an internship or a job?
Oh, that's a great question. What a lovely question. So this right here is my life. This blog that I control on a domain that I control fundamentally represents my entire life. This is my entire career. So everything that I'm writing about here, and I'm still going, you notice the scroll bar. I'm just going to hold down the down arrow here because this is going too slow. That's my resume. Now I could have a big, long, funky resume, but what's really interesting is that when I put good information out there, I put good energy out there, that is going to give me Google juice. It's going to give me Bing juice, right? That good work is out there. And what I'm doing, and this is very important, I'm not sharing expertise. I'm sharing experiences, some of which may be useful, some of which may be not, because a lot of you early in career folks might be thinking, well, I'm not an expert in something yet. None of the things that I blogged about I was an expert on. I was just learning about those things, and I was sharing my journey on those things. So then you might say, well, I'm not going to write a Python 101 because there's already been enough Python 101s, right? But that's okay too. I'm not interested in an expert's Python 101. I want to know the beginner's Python 101. Can I help you, friend? I'm doing a thing right now. It's a keynote. What, you need me to unblock YouTube? Okay, give me a second.
So
Apparently
while
they're
you're
using,
doing that,
they're using YouTube right now, and I'm doing a pie hole. Are you familiar with the pie hole?
I am, yes.
So a pie hole, maybe you can make me big right now. A pie hole is a Raspberry Pi.
Wrong big.
That's the wrong one. There you go. So this is my iPhone here, and I've got an app called Pi Hole Remote, and a Pi Hole is a DNS server running on a Raspberry Pi. So the kids have been watching YouTube during class, but now the teachers are giving them YouTubes in class. So I have to temporarily unblock YouTube, and that was my son upset with me. So I apologize for stopping.
No worries.
Stopping the show. Was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, there was, and I just totally lost track of your pie hole. So go for it. I'll find it again.
Well, so we were talking about resumes, and we're talking about putting out good energy there. And I was saying that the only thing that's different about me is that I'm learning in public, and that's, I think, a really, really exciting thing because it represents one's online resume.
Yeah, I remember what it was. So one of the things that I've been asked in our program is, should I blog in my native language? Should I do videos in my native language? And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
That is a great question. So here's the thing. People sometimes don't want to blog in their native language because they think that maybe less people will see it. And the fact is that less people will see it, right? If you're blogging in Estonian or something, that, yeah, you're going to be limiting your marketplace. But yes, English is the lingua franca, no pun intended, of programming. But if there is a lack of great information in your language, you're actually doing a huge service for your community. If you speak a language of an underrepresented group and you're saying that there aren't enough people in tech that speak this language, or if these are people who don't speak English very well as a general rule, then you're providing them a gateway into tech. So I think that you should blog in your native language if you're more comfortable in it, if there isn't a lot of information in there, because you're actually finding a niche that you can then fill up. And even I, as an English speaker who might be hiring, would love to see a blog that was hundreds of blog posts in a native language. The fact that I can't read them doesn't negate their power, which brings me to another point. I don't want the students to think that I'm giving you suddenly a to-do list of things to do. Like, oh man, now I got a blog too? That sucks. You got to find a natural way to do this stuff where you can say, well, once a week. I don't want you to think that, oh, well, this guy Hanselman says I should blog 5 days a week now. I got class. Once a week, just write in a diary. Just make that diary online. If you're in the middle of coding something and you discovered something, hit print screen. Just hit print screen a couple times. This is literally how I blog. If I'm coding and I'm doing something and I feel like it might be interesting, I just hit Windows print screen every once in a while. I put it into a folder, and then later I'll go back, look at the print screens, and I'll go, oh, okay, I remember. So I'm kind of self-documenting what I'm doing. Another thing.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, Morgan.
Me again.
Hello.
So I think you bring up a really great point about, oh, do I have to write something else? I have to write all these papers for class. I was reading an interesting article the other day. I'd love your take on it, about how there's now different forms of blogging. Instagram, for example, they're saying that actually one of the best way to share posts on Instagram is kind of a mini blog or a mini story. What's your take on that, and kind of how these new social channels are helping people tell their stories in different ways?
I think that is a good point, but I want to also make the point that Instagram didn't exist when I started, and TikTok didn't exist when I started, and YouTube didn't exist when I started, and MySpace doesn't exist anymore, right? So the only place that you can guarantee will exist is your own domain. So I think Instagram is a great platform, and you should do exactly the things that you described. But like, for example, I recently started a TikTok, and now I'm the old man on TikTok, but I'm doing okay. I have a Python script that runs regularly that backs up my TikTok, because TikTok will not exist forever. So I have a Python script that runs, downloads all the TikToks, put them into Dropbox, and then backs them up to my network storage. Took a couple of minutes to do. It's not a huge deal, but I don't want to lose hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. So if you can put your stuff on on Instagram in such a way that you don't lose it, then your words won't be wasted. If you put your things on Facebook and you get blocked or you lose access to your account, you have been giving the gift of your keystrokes to a giant multinational corporation, and that is called a walled garden, right? Do you want to put your words somewhere on the other side of a login prompt? And most people probably don't want to do that.
Probably not. And hey, if it makes you feel any better, Scott, we actually did get a comment from that. The comment is, from person to open source developer to TikTok influencer, getting old must be awesome.
Getting old, and this is a double meaning here. Getting old is a privilege. It does hurt sometimes when you wake up in the morning, but one of the things is the power of being old is the ability to have failed safely for a long period of time. And I want the student ambassadors to have that feeling, both in their work in academia and their work in whatever company they have. I want them to have a space where they can fail. And not everyone feels like they can do that, in fact. I want to remind them that we're all amateurs. This isn't a talk about, oh, here's this professional programmer who's old, who's talking to us about a bunch of things. We're all amateurs. When I went to school in the 90s, a lot of that stuff that I learned doesn't matter anymore. It's all gone because those things have changed. What school taught me was how to learn. School didn't teach me C and C++. It taught me how to learn. So remember that there are no professionals. There are no professionals. And then when you meet someone, me or someone else, who says, hey, you got 20 years experience. Do you have 20 years experience? Some of the people that you're going to meet, some of the old people you're going to meet, myself included, may not have 20 years experience. They may have the same year's experience 20 times. Everyone's journey is different. You might try this. Ask your parents, ask the people in your life that have been around for a while about their experience in their jobs, whatever their jobs are. It might be 10 years, might be 15, 20, 30, and say, did you learn every year? Was that truly 20 years of experience? Or do you think that you sleepwalked through a couple of those years? Did you just have those years happen? That's a tough question, and people have trouble with it. You might have been in school right now for 3 or 4 years, but you might say, I got to be honest with you, sophomore year, I was pretty much asleep. That's okay, because you have to identify that. You have to know that that happened and acknowledge it, and then try to make sure that you're awake and conscious in the following years. And when someone tries to make you feel bad about your title or early in career, or junior engineer or whatever, I like to point people to Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web. And I think it's cool that in his title here in the corner, he could have said the web developer and basically dropped the mic and we all would have known what was up. But he didn't even put senior web developer there. He just said web developer, which I thought was a really cool way to do that. So if he's a web developer, then I'm learning too, and that's cool. Make sense?
Hey, that reminds me of somebody else who was featured in, I believe it was a .NET playlist, and he wanted his title, what was it? Oh yeah, Scott Hanselman, programmer.
Titles are nonsense. Titles, unless you're the CEO, titles don't matter. They matter early on because you feel that they matter and they will help you get more money. But to be honest, the validation of the title of the hard work is more important than carrying the title around. Unless you're like a doctor or something and you got a PhD, then those people are awesome.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we actually got one more question in as you were talking about your the blogs and everything. So would you recommend to students that they have their own blog with their own domain that they control as kind of their central hub, and then everything else kind of fork out from that? So, have a link to GitHub or to wherever else they may be sharing what they're working on?
That is a great question. Do you have a link tree, Morgan?
I don't, but I need to make one, Scott.
You don't. You need to make your own domain.
I have my own domain.
Then make a page underneath called /linktree. What's exciting?
HelloMorgan.dev.
There you go. See, what's exciting about running your own domain is the maintenance of it. And I'm being serious here. A lot of people will get their way, maybe even all the way to Microsoft, and not know how to install an SSL certificate, register domains, think about domain privacy, manage whether or not they want their blog to have www in front, or maybe they don't want the www. Think about their paths. To have the experience of your certificate expiring and one of your readers complaining and then you fixing the certificate is an experience that everyone who is on the internet should have. A link tree right now is just a hack so that if someone visits your TikTok or your Instagram, they click on the tree and then it's just a link to other pages. My link tree is my homepage.
There you go.
Right? And then in the corner here, we've got podcast, YouTube, speaking, whatever. So the link tree is fine. It's convenient, but I just don't want to discount the interest and the importance of running your own stuff. So I'm not saying you should run it so that your people who are going to give you a job are going to be impressed. I'm saying that you should run your own domain because the experience of it is great. Now, this is an old person opinion. Do you drive, Morgan?
Yes, I do.
Do you drive stick shift?
No, I don't.
Why not? The stick shift makes you feel more a part of the machine.
Never had the opportunity. When I was 16, I was lucky to have a car to drive, Scott. I'm not going to complain.
Exactly. Pablo, do you drive stick?
I do. I have a stick shift that I would be happy to let Morgan teach her how to drive stick in mine.
But here's the question, though. Does driving stick shift, manual shift car, make you a better driver? It's arguable. Does it get you from point A to point B differently? No. Does it make you better or different or worse from a person who takes an Uber? The point of the car is to get you from point A to point B. If I were to say, Morgan, until you drive stick, you're not allowed to drive, that's gatekeeping, right? If I said you can't code Java until you learn assembly first, that's gatekeeping. But if I say, I think it'll change your relationship with the car if you think about driving stick, even once or twice. I'm not saying drive stick all the time, but think about it. So making your own website, making your own domain, registering it, putting up a certificate is the equivalent of driving a stick shift for a little while and having that experience. So then in the future, when a bug happens or an interesting technology issue happens, you go, a couple of years ago when Hanselman made me drive stick shift, it changed how I thought about my car. That's the difference between gatekeeping and really, understanding technology, in my opinion.
And Scott, when you have those, sorry.
I was going to say, I'll start driving to Portland now, Scott.
There you go. Come and hang out with me.
When you have these issues with your site, Scott, do you write about them on your blog?
Exactly. Every bug, every experience is a gift. So if I go to my blog, for example, I was recently migrating my blog because I had a problem where my blog was crashing. And it was crashing because the disk filled up. And I went and I talked all about migrating my blog to Azure. I just literally documented the experience. I talked about the whole thing. I have screenshots of Azure and moving it. I did multiple things. I blogged about broken links and 404s. Look at this. Technical debt has a way of sneaking up on you. I moved my blog, my podcast, and my home site, as well as 16 other little stupid project sites like Keys Left, over into Azure, and I documented it all. Is it all perfect? Probably not. Are there mistakes? Absolutely, right? But I actually end up going and Googling myself later, with Bing, of course, and finding tips for myself. It's a diary. What I'm really saying is keep a diary of your experience.
And how often do people reach out to you and say, hey, this helped me?
Oh, check this out. So here's my Gmail, and recently Jeff Atwood, who started Stack Overflow, emailed me and said, I want to thank you for writing this. It's still true today. And he found some random thing from 2019 on how to fix an obscure thing in USB in Windows. I wrote a blog post just a couple of days ago, and I want you to say, look at this sentence right here. There may be 5 or 6 of us with this issue, but if you're that person, this blog post is for you. You don't need to worry about writing blog posts for 1 million people. You just need to write them for 1 or 2.
Scott, it's funny that you say that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got so excited.
There's no way to pop in without it. Please, go ahead.
We literally just got a question about this exact thing. The question reads, since you mentioned about your blogs, which are pretty cool, so there you go.
Pretty cool.
How do you, just pretty cool, so you got to work on that. How do you manage less engagement? I get really disappointed if one of my blog posts gets lesser reads, and thus I have often scrapped a lot of blogs since I'm afraid of this.
Oh, that's a great question. So I did a TikTok a couple of days ago. Let me show you this. Here's 3 TikToks. 20,000 views, 3,000 views, 6,000 views. Which one do you think I'm the most excited about?
I feel like it's a trick question, so I'm gonna go with the middle one.
Question. Well, my wife is from Zimbabwe, and I've been learning Zulu for the last several years. So this is a duet with a woman who is teaching us Zulu, and I was practicing some of the glottal clicks in Zulu. And people didn't like it. They didn't find it useful. They're like, why is this content on your TikTok? Well, that's my life.
Yeah.
But I teach them how to pin an app in Edge, and they lose their freaking minds, right? You go and you teach someone a tip, and it's like, oh, look, here's a hotkey you never heard of. So if I wanted to chase the hotkey crowd, I'm letting the audience tell me what I want to blog about. But I am not going to feel bad about other stuff that I blog about, because just as if you follow me on Twitter rather, I'm not a tech fire hose. I'm a human being, and I actually like a lot of different things. So it's Beyonce gifts, and I talk about all kinds of things. You can
I follow
unfollow
you for
me.
the gifts.
I know that you only follow me exclusively for the gifts, in fact. Right? So what you need to be thinking about is how many people hit that blog. Was it more than 2? You just doubled your keystrokes. If 10 people visit your blog, that's an order of magnitude. Stop trying to chase hundreds of thousands of something. What would you feel like if you had hundreds and hundreds of blog posts? Remember, I only blog twice a week. So 52 weeks a year times 2 with a break for Christmas, that's 100 blog posts. All you got to do is blog twice a week, and you've got 100 in a year. It's just like working out, right? A little bit of work up front and a little bit of regularity will give you a huge archive. It doesn't matter if anybody's reading them or not.
There's a question about whether or not they should focus on a single technology or share their skills in different sectors of technology. This is from Konstantinos in Greece.
I am going to jump ahead because I do want to come back about mentorship and sponsorship and stuff like that. So don't let me forget that. But let's talk about this. You know the Swiss Army knife? Little tiny knife, does a bunch of things. The Swiss Army knife is lovely. My dad gave me that when I was 10. This is the literal Swiss Army knife that my dad gave me. It is a really bad pair of scissors. It is a funny little knife that isn't amazing and everything. But what's great about the Swiss Army knife is that when you need a screwdriver, it's there. It's kind of a crappy one, but it's still awesome. It's even got like pliers. This is not meant to be a complete toolbox in your pocket. It's meant to be a little knife that's not amazing at everything. But it's important that you at least be a good knife. Don't skimp on the basics. So what you should learn, the fundamentals. You need to learn the fundamentals. Learn the base of the pyramid. Data structures, algorithms, and computer architecture. Memory, RAM, things like that. I talk about the fundamentals on my YouTube. I've actually got a YouTube called computerstufftheydidn'tteachyou.com. And over there on my YouTube, I talk about character encoding, text editing, Git, pull requests, all that kind of stuff. It's a whole thing. And this is all about the basics. I'm not teaching C# or teaching Java. I'm teaching fundamentals of computers. So that's what I think is more important. And that's the kind of things you should be asking of your mentor. See how I juxtaposed and ran back to my mentorship conversation? Because the mentor can teach you how to code or help you with data structures and algorithms, but really what you need is to understand the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. Mentors are those mirrors that they help you define your dream. They look at your strengths. They might guide you. They might advise you in certain technologies. But sponsors can act as spotlights, and they make luck. They create luck by lifting people into new spaces. You have probably had a sponsor in your life. You've had that teacher or that college counselor or that high school counselor who said, you know, I heard about an opportunity and it's perfect for you, and I'd love you to go and check that out. And if they hadn't said that, if they hadn't mentioned that, or the school that you're at right now, maybe your life would be fundamentally different. So now we want to take that word sponsorship and we want to split that up, because sponsorship is actually a bunch of different spectrums, a bunch of different things on the spectrum here. A sponsor could be a strategizer, sits down and talks about planning and long-term strategy. A sponsor could be a connector that is saying, hey, have you met so-and-so? You two should talk, who generously shares their network. Sponsors are sometimes opportunity givers, where someone might say, there's an event that is happening and I think you'd be perfect for it. Or they might talk about you behind your back in the right way. An advocate is a person that's saying, you know, I tell you, that Morgan is just, she's doing a great job. I really think you should consider her for this position. Oh, look at it, and she appears. See? Sponsorship and mentorship are different people. If I were to go and have a regular one-on-one with Morgan, where this is me and here's Morgan, and I lecture her every year, and then I call that, or every week rather, and I call that mentorship, and I pat myself on the back and I go, old person has talked to young person and given them wisdom. I'm so wise. That's a one-way relationship. Remember that question at the beginning of the conversation? You need to balance out that relationship. I'm going to learn from you and you're going to learn from me. Pablo.
So question is, how do they find a mentor? How do they approach a mentor? What's the best way for ambassadors or anybody really to kind of initiate that relationship?
That is a great question. A lot of people think that it is cold calling, and that's really hard. If you email me or Pablo or Morgan or anyone that you know in the space out of the blue, it's going to be hard because I've got a lot of stuff going on. You have a lot of stuff going on. Cold calling people and spamming them isn't really a great way. The best way is to be visible and around in spaces. Now, it's difficult right now with the Rona, but to be visible in spaces and show up. Simply showing up can be a way to get a sponsorship and mentorship, because it usually happens more naturally than you're used to. For example, user groups, meetups, by just simply being present to them, clubs at school, showing up, and someone says, oh, I've seen Pablo like 3 times. Like, he shows up at all these events, always asking great questions, always visible, always positive, always trying to make things happen. And then during that little mixer part at the end of the meetup, you go and chat with someone. And rather than saying, can I pick your brain? Hey, Pablo, can we have lunch and I pick your brain? There's only so many lunches, right? There's 365 lunches a year. I can't give lunches to everybody. Why don't I ask him for specific things? It's one thing to go and spam someone and say, I have a question. It's another to say, I have a very specific problem and I'd like your advice on it. That's different than saying, can I pick your brain for a little while?
And do you feel that you learn from your mentors, your mentees?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So again, the older I get, think about this for a second. The older I get, the more specific my experience is to me, right? I've got 50 years of being me. I don't have 22 years of being you. So the older I get, I just get more and more and more and more specific to being more and more me. I'm as me as I've ever been. This is like Hanselman 5.0. But for you, you've got whole new experiences, different TV shows, different teachers, different languages, different thoughts, different techniques, different experiences. Absolutely. If you don't feel that your mentor is respecting that, and then it's not a relationship like this, as opposed to an imbalanced one like this, then that's definitely a problem and you want to get out of that. You also need to acknowledge that mentorship is not forever. It happens in phases. And sometimes you break up with your mentor or you just fade away and you say, you know, I'm going to change our weekly one-on-one to a monthly one-on-one and then quarterly. And then I'll say, I've learned a lot from you and I really appreciate your time. And I'm going to go take this job and I'll hopefully catch you later. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So Scott, are you saying that me mentoring you on Animal Crossing is no longer relevant?
No, I actually was playing Animal Crossing yesterday because you guilted me into my weed situation, and I spent almost an hour cleaning up weeds on the top part of my island. So I just think that we don't need a weekly Animal Crossing mentorship. I just think we need to change it to maybe once a month, because I feel good about my island. It's never going to be as nice as yours, but it's nice. So I'm going to feel good about my island.
All right. I mean, I think your island's pretty cool. And actually, I love what you said about mentorship in phases. So one of my mentors in the company, Jacqueline Russell, who helps run our MakeCode team, and I would say if the student ambassadors haven't checked out MakeCode yet, they totally should. But she helped mentor me and made me realize that since I'm passionate about STEM, I could totally get a job with STEM education within Microsoft. And then I moved roles, and then, once again, we did purposely split up, you just kind of go your own ways. And then a few months ago, she reached out to me and said, hey, will you chat with my new employee? She's a new PM on my team. right out of school? And my answer was yes, absolutely. And so I think it's also kind of cool to make those connections as you go.
That's really cool. So that's a great example where your mentor turned you into a mentor, and then you started to share your knowledge with other people. Isn't it fun how we're all learning how to click on which button here, and we're seeing all kinds of random switches from, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes for those of the student ambassadors who don't realize how hard it is to put a live event like this on. Different scenes, camera 1, camera 2, it's super fun.
I'm going to go away now so they can see your head on the big screen.
That's okay. Cool. Well, so as we get towards the last few minutes here, I think we've only got a couple more minutes here. Well, maybe we'll have a couple more questions, but I also wanted to put a little bit of an advertisement in here. So the advertisement is, I have a podcast, and the podcast that I have, I'm very proud of, because a lot of podcasts are just kind of, two folks talking about JavaScript. And I can't see you all, but I understand that there's a lot of you. And I want you to know that there are a lot of cool people talking about a lot of cool stuff on podcasts like mine. I've been doing a podcast, almost 800 episodes for every Thursday for the last 15 years. And you'll notice as I'm scrolling through this podcast, I'm just scrolling with my mouse here, that a lot of these people look like they're from all over the world, because they are. These are cool people doing cool stuff in tech. And I'm having no trouble finding amazing people. Whatever topic you're into, there's probably a podcast about it. All of these people out there are kind and are doing good work in tech, and you should check them out. You can also go and search all the transcripts. I recently put the whole thing through an AI, and now I've got, let's see if I actually find a mentor. I've got, let's see, I actually haven't tested this, so we'll see. There we go. So here is the word mentor appearing 60 times, 59 times. I can go back and search and then click on that and find a specific place where a guest said the word mentor or whatever within almost 400 hours of podcast content. So you only have 777 episodes to catch up on. So I would encourage you to go and get on that. It's free.
Two quick questions from the ambassadors. One is, what would you consider the best platform? Like, what platform are you using, and what would you consider the best platform for them to start their own website?
Oh, their own websites? That's a good question. So on the Hanselman.com website, I wrote from scratch. I'm a big fan of someone writing their homepage from scratch. And this is just HTML. It's nothing fancy. The only thing that's like active on it is I have my blog posts here, and I have where I'm speaking at conferences on the right. The rest of it's just, it's a brochure. Then I put /blog underneath it. This is a thing that's called Das Blog, D-A-S blog, which is German for the blog. But honestly, WordPress is a perfectly reasonable thing. But also, if you're just getting started, there are what are called static site generators. And there's a lot of great static site generators like Jekyll and Gatsby. So static site generators are cool because they're not actually active blogs with databases that cost money. They're really just things that run once in a batch, and they generate your site, and then you write a new blog post and it generates the whole site again. This allows you to have a website that is really, really inexpensive because the work happens during build time. So I would encourage people to try, a static site generator. But I would think that you should basically have a home page, like we talked about with Morgan, where you have your main page with your resume and the things about you, and that becomes your link tree. And that's just static HTML, and then a blog that is either a static site generator. And a great way to get started is with GitHub Actions, which can generate those for you. All of this can be done for darn near free.
Awesome. And the last question I think we have time for, how is Microsoft advancing diversity inclusion, connect with employees, bring out the best in each other, and how would you recommend that the ambassadors do the same?
Wow, that's a big question for the last minute of the event. I can say that as a manager, as a middle manager at Microsoft, that I have done just literally this year almost 40 hours of training on inclusion, diversity, how to talk to people, how to be a decent manager, and things like that. This has been both the kind of learning and education where I watch videos, but also live classes. I've actually got a how to be a manager class today for an hour. We have a cohort where we get together and we actually role play conversations, awkward conversations, how to make them non-awkward, non-inclusive conversations, how to make them inclusive. So this is being pushed from the Satya level down to make sure that we are hopefully making Microsoft welcoming. Now, it's a 130,000 person company, and there's going to be jerks at any place where there's that many people. So there are pockets of jerks, but we are hopefully and slowly weeding them out. And I think that both of you would probably agree with that.
I do indeed. Scott, thank you so much. We have so many amazing comments. They're writing notes. They're taking screenshots of everything you're posting, and we really appreciate you joining us and inspiring our ambassadors.
Follow me on TikTok. I got to get that TikTok money, baby.
Got to get more tacos, right?
Scott, one last request as you're signing off. They want you to say goodbye in as many languages as you can. That's a little bit of pressure there. I can order food in about 9 languages, but I can't be put on the spot on too many languages. But How
I will
about some
say
Spanish, Scott?
Muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias, Scott. Hasta luego.
Thanks, Scott.
De nada. Adiós.